When I went into LexLab, I was looking for legal tech specific type of support, the business model, how to position a legal product, and then also how to sell into law firms. Those were the three things I was looking to solve for.
Today on Law Next, LexLab, a legal innovation hub at UC Hastings Law School, just wrapped up the fourth cohort of its Legal Tech Accelerator program with a demo day at which the 7 startup participants got to pitch their products to potential investors. But this cohort was noticeably different than prior ones. It was the first to participate 100% virtually. We'll speak with LexLab's director, Drew Amerson, as well as with Tiyani Majoko, co-founder of Anu, one of the startups that participated in the program, about the Accelerator program and about the experience of conducting it virtually. This is Bob Ambrogi, and you're listening to Law Next, the podcast that features the innovators and entrepreneurs who are driving what's next in law. Before we get to today's interview, let me tell you about one of the sponsors that generously supports Law Next. When perspectives shift, possibilities unfold. That's why Paradigm has brought together 4 world-class legal software solutions to push the standard for legal technology into the future. With Practice Panther, Bill for Time, Maris Case, and the online payment solution HeadNote, Paradigm empowers lawyers across the spectrum of practice areas, geography, and business needs. Learn more at joinparadigm.com. Now on to today's interview. Drew and Tiyani, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bob. It's a pleasure.
Hi, Bob. Thank you for the opportunity. It's great to be here.
Yeah, and it's good to talk to you both again. Tiyani, I wrote about you guys a while ago, so it's great to connect again and to see that you're participating in this Accelerator program. Listeners of this program may remember having heard about LexLab a couple of times before, actually. Back in 2 years ago, we had Alice Armitage, who's the Director of Applied Innovation at UC Hastings and who helps oversee LexLab on the show. And then earlier, we actually ran a recording of a panel discussion that took place at LexLab on alternative legal models. It was a really great panel, and we ran that as an episode of this show. So good to revisit again. But Drew, let me just start by asking you, just for those listeners who somehow don't know what LexLab is after all that exposure on this podcast, what is LexLab overall, and what is the Accelerator program that you provide?
Sure. Well, we love the exposure, Bob, and appreciate feeding content to you. So we'll keep up that partnership. As you mentioned, LexLab is an innovation hub at UC Hastings Law School. So we launched about 3 years ago. Our chancellor, David Fagman, really was noticing in the legal ecosystem that tech was becoming more and more important, and seeing just this landscape starting to boom. He didn't really know what he wanted to do with it, but he sort of turned things over to Alice Armitage, and she helped get this program up and running. We have 3 pillars at LexLab. There's the Accelerator program that I run. There is an event schedule, which we put on, which that alternative legal models was part of. And then there's also a curriculum. So knocking on wood right now, we will have a concentration in law and innovation coming up next year. It's before the curriculum committee right now. The full faculty is voting next week, so we'll have that for our students next year.
That's really exciting. Where do I sign up?
Come back to law school. You can come back and get another degree.
Well, if I have to do that, I don't know if I want. The law and innovation part sounds fun. The rest of it, not so much. And then just generally, we'll get into this in a lot more detail, but just generally tell us a little bit more about the Accelerator program itself.
Sure. So one of the challenges we have at UC Hastings is that we're a standalone law school. Unlike some of our peer schools, we can't run over to the business school or to the engineering department to get somebody to come talk about blockchain. So we set up this Accelerator program in part to bring outside legal tech companies into our campus where they could work with our students. So as you mentioned, this is the 4th cohort. We had 7 companies going through this time. Typically, we run this sort of on a Y Combinator model where we have lunch and learns every week, and we bring in a different speaker to talk about a different topic. So it could be fundraising. It could be how do you sell to law firms. It could be how do you hone your message. And we walk them through this 13-week program that coincides with our semester, and it all leads up to this demo day that we just had.
Tiyani, you are the co-founder of a startup called Anu, and you were a participant in this cohort. We'll talk later about the experience of that, but first tell us about yourself and about your company.
Thanks, Bob. So I'm a co-founder at Anu, and at Anu, we connect early stage founders to law firms because we realize that it's really hard for early stage founders to be able to vet, identify, connect with, and start working with the law firm and to be able to figure out what the legal service is going to cost beforehand. And there are different types of founders in the sense that not everyone is trying to run a venture-backed or venture-backable type of startup, but they still have similar legal needs. So there's a huge market that caters to companies that are looking for venture funding in the law firms. But then there's a pretty sizable gap for people that don't have those networks that allow them to get into and build relationships with, partners in those large law firms. And also the truth is that large law firms don't want to see 500 startups coming and knocking on their door because they're looking for a very specific type of startup. But we have the capacity and desire to be able to help them by connecting them to small practitioners, so solo lawyers and small law firms that are growing an emerging growth practice and are looking to adopt more technology in the way that they not only process their matters, but also the way they identify and find clients. So that's where we are, really at that corner of future of work, helping law firms identify clients, but also a legal services marketplace, helping early stage founders get access to legal services efficiently and affordably.
And you are not new to being an entrepreneur. You've done this before in other ways, right?
Yes. So my career started in South Africa. I'm a lawyer by background. I started my career 10 years ago in South Africa, and in big law, that was my first introduction to the career. And I quickly realized that the work is great, but there were some parts of the way that the work was done that were a bit icky. And I was like, I'm not enjoying this. I like my clients. I like
Was that word icky? Icky is everything?
Yeah, it's a bit icky.
Yeah. I haven't heard that word yet used to describe it, right? That's a good one. I like that.
Everything just felt unnecessarily hard. And so I decided to start a legal consulting firm 5 years into my career. And it was at a time where legal services were only procured through law firms or a law clinic. And I was like, there has to be a third way. Like if you need a lawyer, you can't only find a lawyer at a law clinic or in the law firm. And I mean, I'm not counting like in-house practitioners in that instance. I'm saying how the general public, or primarily how small businesses got access to legal services, those are their only options. And my co-founder and I in my legal consulting firm, we wrote to the Law Society in South Africa to ask if we could use a consulting model, which is in a sense a private company that provides legal services. And their response was, we're not saying you can, but we're not saying you can't. So we just, existed in that gray area until recently. We have a new Legal Practice Act that now kind of allows legal consulting firms to exist. So we were really pioneers of the legal consulting model in South Africa.
That's great. In Anu got started kind of as a school project originally.
Yes.
Right? You want to explain that?
I'd like to say Anu started in my dorm room. It literally was, it did.
You and Mark Zuckerberg. Right?
All the great companies.
Well, I still have a ways to go before I catch up with Mark. We started Anu coming out of Cornell Tech. Well, it was actually something that we're working on while we were at Cornell Tech. But then as the world began to rapidly change with the protest and living through a pandemic, and we just, me and my co-founder, Max, were looking at all these people that had, offers from these huge companies that were now being rescinded. And we're like, do we want to, go out there and kind of fight for a spot in, these companies? Or do we want to keep working on what we've been working on, which is something that we enjoy? And we really like each other as human beings. And we're solving an important problem. Like, let's do that instead. And so that's where Anu was birthed from.
Thanks. Drew, so we've just heard from one of the companies that was in this cohort. What can you tell us? I don't know if you want to tell us specifically or generally about some of the other ones that participated this time.
Sure. So as you mentioned, we had 7 companies, and each time we do this, we try to get a broad range of folks addressing holes in the legal marketplace, right? So we try not to get all contract review companies. We mix it up. So Tiyani just told you about Anu. Let me just go through our list. We had Jade, which is founded by Gillian Fishman, and she has created a company that's really legal tech focused in this sense. She works on customer success and adoption, right? So if you're rolling out a new legal tech tool, but you're really having trouble getting old, stodgy lawyers to adopt it, her company helps them by creating plugins for your software platform that will walk folks through that and help them use the software. So it was great. We had People Clerk, which is Camila and Gustavo Lopez, and they are working in the small claims area. So basically, at least in California, I think in most states, you can't have lawyers work in small claims court, but you can have lawyers sort of help prepare your package going into it. And People Clerk is doing that. So they'll bundle up your evidentiary package going to small claims court. We had a company from Calgary called Power Switch, and it's two women, Beth Thompson, Carrie Gore, who are creating, it's sort of an e-discovery light system. Instead of having to go out and buy one of the big names in e-discovery, they've created something that was born out of their own experiences going through divorces, where they had to go back and collect all these emails and especially text messages. So they found a new company that creates a tool that makes that a lot easier. We had Troct. Chris Draper out of Iowa is creating a company that creates a virtual digital fingerprint on all of your documents, basically just to make sure that everything's authentic. It's a fraud prevention tool.
Yeah, they were a contestant in the tech show, Startup Alley thing I do every year this year.
Yeah, and then the last one, if I'm getting, two more. We had Rain Intelligence. I want to talk about this company because it's really cool. We didn't talk about this before, but in addition to Demo Day we had in the morning. In the afternoon, we had students from UC Hastings do a pitch competition. And these are students who are in Alice's How to Build a Legal Tech Startup class. And their final, instead of writing a paper or taking an exam, is doing a pitch competition. And Bob, you came and judged, I think, the first one of these. So
I did.
It's great to come back to you on this now. But
I did.
I can't remember if, so Rain Intelligence, the founder is Mohammed Rashik. He's a UC Hastings alum. I don't think he was in your cohort. He might have been in the next one. But the super cool thing about him is he started a company out of UC Hastings and he's keeping it going now.
That's great.
Yeah. And then the last company is YotangoBot out of Baltimore, Maryland. And it's Jared Jascott. And he's created a chat bot that helps folks looking for help with immigration law. And the really cool thing about his chat bot is it's really engaging in the sense he's recorded a lot of video segments. So if you're interacting with a chat bot and it comes to a certain point, Jared will pop up and actually talk to you one-on-one. So I think that's really cool. And I should say, Tiyani, we gave 2 awards for Demo Day. We had 1 award for the most compelling idea, and we're talking to the winner of that. Tiyani is the winner there. And Jared and YotangoBot won the award for best pitch.
I should have had Jared program me here, and then I wouldn't even have to come onto the podcast. We just have
we're all going to be replaced someday, yeah.
This was the 4th cohort to take part in LexLab's Startup Accelerator. We've just heard LexLab's director, Drew Amerson, describe the companies that participated, and we heard from Tiyani Majoko, the co-founder of Anu, one of the startups that participated in the program. But thanks to the pandemic, this was the first time LexLab ran the program virtually without the benefit of having the companies come and work in its offices at UC Hastings Law School in San Francisco. So what was it like for Amerson to run the Accelerator program virtually? And what was the experience like for Majoko as a founder? When we return, we'll talk about the good and the bad of running an Accelerator virtually. But first, let's hear from the sponsors who so generously support Law Next. Bill for Time brings modern technology to the legal billing process. Gone are the days of lawyers tracking their time in a notepad. Bill for Time offers time tracking, online invoicing, specialized IOLTA accounting, and more. Try Bill for Time today at billfortime.com. That's Bill, the number 4, time.com. Welcome back to Law Next. Over the past few years, legal tech accelerator programs at law schools, law firms, and elsewhere have served as critical launching pads for fledgling legal tech startups. A key element of most of these programs has been the ability to have the founders on premises at the Accelerator's offices, where they can work directly with mentors and collaborate with each other. But what happens when a pandemic forces the program to go 100% virtual? As we return to our conversation with LexLab Director Drew Amerson and Tiyani Majoko, one of the founders who participated in the latest cohort, we discuss the good and the bad of a virtual accelerator program. So you've done this 3 times before, in which the participants were able to come to LexLab, operate there physically, hang out, get to know each other. This was the first time you did this all virtually.
Yeah.
What was the experience like? How was it different?
It was hard. I'll be honest. I wish I could say that this was an easy transition, but like everybody else this past year, we've been struggling with trying to find how to replicate the real world experience virtually. And there's a couple of different legal tech accelerator programs out there, and the way we kind of differentiated ourselves before was by giving companies a real space. So the companies who were in our program would come to UC Hastings and have co-working space there, and it really created a strong sense of community among those companies. And we didn't have that this time. So we turned to Slack. We tried to recreate that. I wish I could say it worked just as well, but I don't think it did. But one other thing we did is, I told you we have this 13-week program. We do these weekly lunch and learns. We really scaled that back this time. So we had half the number of speakers. And then every other week, we just opened it up and let the participants get to talk and know each other and share their own problems and discuss what's happening. And I think that's where, it can't replace just sitting next to somebody and sort of the serendipitous conversations that relationships really develop over. But it did create a certain sense of community this time. But maybe Tiyani can talk to that and how it was for her.
Yeah, Tiyani, what was the experience like for you?
I really enjoyed the curriculum that was put together and getting exposed to that. The curriculum that pertained to legal operations, that for me was an unexpected surprise because I didn't. And I think, I just finished grad school a year ago and I still was enjoying being in class again. Maybe there's a symptom that I need to check in myself. But I really did enjoy those classes because it gave me a new view about, like I said at the beginning, that when I was in legal practice, there were some things that were icky. And it's like, oh my gosh, legal operations fixes a lot of that stuff. And so that was a really nice introduction into that space. It was also great to be able to connect with other founders as well. And I had just completed my on-deck fellowship when I began this program. So I had a lot of experience and a lot of, feedback and knowledge about like the fundraising cycle. And I was able to give input and insight to some of the other fellows that were thinking of kickstarting their fundraising journey. I think Drew and Alice and Julia, the team, were really responsive. They did their best to support. I would constantly, try and schedule one-on-ones with Drew. And the network of alumni advisors that existed was also really helpful and giving really useful insights and feedback. So for me, the people is what made it, really worthwhile. And, getting, like I said, that introduction into the legal operations landscape. I went in looking for information about running a legal tech company, but I learned so much more about learned so much more about legal operations at the end.
Yeah, well, and you just kind of anticipated my next question, because I was going to ask you why you went into it in the first place. What were you hoping, what were you expecting? What were you hoping to get out of it when you first went into it?
When I was with On Deck, it was, very generic, founder focused. They don't really focus on a specific industry. When I went into LexLab, I was looking for legal tech specific type of support, really understanding the mind of lawyers and lawyer buying cycles and how to sell into law firms, especially small law firms. I also wanted to learn about how to position a legal product. We're also, at the model tinkering right now with our business model. Working in a highly regulated industry, we want to avoid fee sharing and other types of regulations that exist in this space. So thinking about ways that we can still run a profitable operation. So those were the core things I was, trying to get input on. So the business model, how to position a legal product, and then also how to sell into law firms. Those were the three things I was looking to solve for.
Drew, it was, as you said, difficult, and there were challenges in conducting it virtually. What about, were there advantages or were there pluses to it that maybe you hadn't anticipated, or that even the ones that you did anticipate?
Yeah, for sure. I think the first thing that pops to mind is it was way easier to get really great speakers this time, right? Because we didn't have to find people who were in the Bay Area. We didn't have to fly them into the Bay Area if they weren't here. And folks were generally really receptive to giving an hour of their time to come talk to our Accelerator participants. I think, to go back to something Tiyani was talking about, she mentioned the legal operations curriculum. And that's actually part of the law and tech concentration. It's a whole class we're running this time. I'm co-teaching that with Alice. It's for UC Hastings law students. It's legal operations for lawyers. But we invited all the Accelerator participants to also join in that one. So, we got Mary O'Carroll from Google to come. We got Akshay Verma from Facebook. We got all these incredible people.
Formerly of Google.
Oh, you're right. As of yesterday. I just saw that. Now Ironclad. So that's right. So we got all these incredible speakers, and that was one real upside. It was just so much easier to get access to these incredible folks. I will also say this. I think that the demo day, it's a totally different dynamic when you do it over Zoom. Mm-hmm. It made it easier to record. It made it easier to potentially get folks to listen to it and watch it down the road. And for whatever reason, I do think that the pitches in this cohort were the best top to bottom that we've seen. So, going forward, I think, I really hope we're back in person. I think we're going to be back in person in the fall. That's the plan. But I do think we're going to incorporate some of these guest speakers and potentially having folks. And another thing, Tiyani she's in New York, right? And before we've always required people to be here. We had a company from Calgary. So I think we're going to open it up and make it sort of a hybrid model in the future.
Yeah. Do you think the pitches were better because of the medium, or it just happened to be a group of better presenters?
I think part of it is within the last year, we've all become more facile, operating over Zoom and screen sharing and walking folks through that. I will also say, I think part of it this time we had for our how to pitch or how to tell a story session, we had Andy Wilson, who's the CEO of a e-discovery company, Logical, who is just an incredible speaker. And he had a great deck and put on a great session. And I think the participants took a lot from that. So I really have to give him a big shout out.
Yeah. Tiyani, what did you think about the format of the presentations? What was it like for you to be presenting over? I mean, you've probably gotten pretty used to presenting over Zoom, right?
Mine was the presentation with all the glitches. The screen wouldn't open.
Oh, really?
Only at the beginning. Then we shuffled things around, and she came on in the second half and obviously crushed it.
Okay. Did you go in alphabetical order or reverse alphabetical order?
She drew the second straw, but ended up going fourth.
Okay. The trouble with having a company named Anu is you have to go first in these things.
That's what I discovered. It's either you go first or you go last, if depending on the way that the company wants to do the presenter's order. But the presentation format was really great. I like that we had sufficient time to make our presentation. I think we had 10 minutes, so that's way more than enough time. And then also giving an opportunity for us to interact with the judges. But what I also really liked about the UC Hastings, well, now I'm kind of going back to the previous question you asked, and even this, is that during the pitch, they will open a breakout room for you to be able to have one-on-one interactions with other people that are attending. So I guess it's kind of the virtual way of people coming to your table if you're at a fair. So I really like that, because then people who want to ask a question or might be a bit shy or intimidated. And normally what I find is that lots of women of color and women are the ones that would coming into my room because they want to find out more about what I'm doing. And I also like that as part of the UC Hastings program, as one of the founders in the Accelerator, you have to do office hours for students so that they can learn more about your startup and ask you questions and seek internships if they can. So I really like that ability to be able to also give back. So that was one of the things that really stood out for me, because when I was in all my degrees, it would have been great for me to see another alternative career path apart from, kind of the common things, be a lawyer, be an advocate, or get into public service. So this was a really great way to also give back, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah, well, it is still unfortunately the case that there are few overall women founders in legal tech and far fewer women of color founders of legal tech, or even men of color founders of legal tech. So it's good that they have that kind of access and ability to kind of talk with you and get your experience. Drew, what is it that you kind of hope the participants in these cohorts take away? What are the skills you want them to take away, or the experience or opportunities you want them to take away?
So let's start with skills first. I think the biggest skill that we were able to share with them this time is the importance of narrative, the importance of storytelling. And I think that is why maybe the pitches seem so much stronger and clearer this year. As far as what opportunities they have, and I think this speaks to what we're trying to create at LexLab, and we're trying to create a hub, right? We're trying to be a network of entrepreneurial folks in the legal space. And one of the biggest value adds, I think, for Tiyani and the other folks it was just the introductions and the ability to meet folks, and not just investors, but potential customers, our alumni who are out in practice in different verticals. So I think that was great. And for us, that's the opportunity for LexLab. I want all of these folks to go out and keep building their companies and come back as speakers and mentors. And Tiyani, I loved hearing you say that it was really nice for you to have students come to your office hours and potentially work as interns. We force that on the companies. We don't take any equity. We don't charge them any money. We just ask them to engage with our students. And I know on the student side, they love it, but I always really appreciate hearing that from the founders too.
Yeah. You mentioned opportunity to talk to investors. Do they actually get to talk to investors over the course of this? Do any of them end up getting, at least ongoing conversations, if not eventual investments out of this?
Yes, to both of those. So I haven't mentioned the judges for this year's demo day, but we had Zach Posner, who's the managing director of the Legal Tech Fund. We had Angela McRae, who is a general counsel at Green Oaks Capital, a VC firm. Josh King, who's a Hastings alum. He's now the GC at Real Self, but before that, he was the chief legal officer at Avo. So he's steeped in this and had some really good comments for Tiyani, actually, because he knew all about that space.
Ethics expert extraordinaire as well. So.
Right.
Josh, yeah.
And our last was Paul Harmon, who's a senior claims counsel at Travelers Insurance and works on their team that's looking at sort of innovative legal tech tools that they can be using. But even outside of those folks, there were some investors who had come to each of our events. Our first event every semester is actually what we call Meet the New Cohort. So we have each company do just a quick 5-minute pitch. And the idea is twofold. First, it's to introduce the companies to the students so they can work with them down the road or do office hours with them. But it's also to see how these companies are pitching at the beginning of the program and see how they develop to the end. But even at that first Meet the New Cohort, there were a couple of angel investors who were popping into rooms and met with some of the companies and have taken some further conversations. And I know at least 2 companies, if they haven't invested in, they're having serious conversations with them right now. So
that's great. Tiyani, what's next for you and your company?
Continuing on the product market fit, that's where we are, continuing with our product market fit hustle. That's precisely it. Acquiring new customers, figuring out a way to cheaply and repeatably find startup customers. It's also focusing on, really the business model aspect of things. We don't have a hard time finding law firms, and partly thank you to you, Bob, because a lot of lawyers reached out to us when they saw the article that you published the first time. So we have a lot of inbound from firms, but we're not ready to open up taking more new firms until we're able to solidly find a way for us to keep acquiring and finding startup customers in a way that's repeatable, sustainable, and affordable for us. Mm-hmm. And we're not at the moment seeking external financing until we can figure this piece out.
Yeah, you have, though, you've been operating and you have matched firms and founders
we've had
up to date.
Definitely,
right?
we've helped about 70, so that's 70 founders get connected to. We have 10 firms that work with us right now. So we have a really good success rate in that respect. And founders we get feedback from them. The thing that always comes back is how easy our platform is to use and the speed at which we're able to deliver that connection for them. So those are things that, keep us warm at night and keep us, put the joy in our hearts. What we don't have in our pockets, we have in our hearts. But we really need to, ramp that up and being able to move from 70 to 70 to 700 to 7,000 to 70,000 to 7 million. We need to figure out how we're going to make that happen.
So Mark Zuckerberg will be jealous someday of this.
That's the goal.
Idea.
That's the goal.
Yeah. And Drew, what's next for you? Are you guys going to be developing an icky law tech class, or
maybe that should be one of our sessions next fall? Is how to avoid the ick.
The ick factor.
The ick factor.
I like that. Yeah. No. So you've got this tech program coming in the fall.
Program,
you hope, and then anything else going on there?
So it's a bit of rinse and repeat, and try to do better each year. Yeah. So we'll take lessons, and we'll be opening up our accelerator again, accepting applications in July. So if anybody's listening and is interested, check out lexlab.uchastings.edu.
It's been great to talk to you, and give you each an opportunity to say anything else, because I'm always asking you lots of questions. And if you had anything else you wanted to say about this, Drew, anything else you wanted to kind of mention, or are you good?
No, I just want to say what a pleasure it is to watch these companies come in and watch them grow and develop. And Tiyani, it's been especially true for you this time. So congrats on winning the Most Compelling Idea Award, and can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you so much, Drew.
Give you the last word, Tiyani. Anything else you'd like to say?
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Drew, for this opportunity to speak with you. And thank you for making the legal space feel safe and, feel accessible for me to be able to communicate and to participate in this space. So I've really, really enjoyed being a member of the legal tech fraternity. But I also want to, if anyone is listening and you're really passionate about startups and primarily, interested in helping underrepresented startups to be able to get access to legal services, if marketplaces are your jam, please reach out to me because I would love to pick your brain. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Thanks to both of you for taking the time, and congratulations on pulling off this virtual cohort. And congratulations to you, Tiyani. I'll continue to follow your growth and development as well. So hope you both stay well, and thanks for being with me today.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
My sincere thanks to Drew Amerson, Director of LexLab, and Tiyani Majoko of Anu for joining me today on Law Next. I hope you enjoyed the show. Another show to check out is Contract Teardown, just launched by our sponsor Law Insider on YouTube. Each week, they analyze contracts ranging from Y Combinator's SAFE agreement to Robinhood Financial's terms of service. Find them at lawinsider.com/resources. Law Next is produced, engineered, and edited by Populous Radio. I'm your host, Bob Ambrogi. I hope you'll join us again next time for another episode of Law Next.